Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of Kitty Cat Go Live, where we discuss various topics related to traveling and adventuring with your cat. I'm your host, Emily Hall, and tonight we're chatting about a common struggle here in the cat adventure community, getting your cat comfortable around strangers, both at home and in public spaces. If you're watching with us tonight or on the replay, be sure to say hello in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Questions are encouraged along the way as well. Oops, here we go. Oh, sorry, guys. Technical difficulties, of course. Okay, our special guest for the evening is J.R. Henderson. J.R. is the owner and operator of the Cognitive Cat LLC, an environmental modification, reinforcement-based technological approach to creating and exploring species-appropriate responses while increasing trust and relationality between human and feline. As a graduate of the Companion Animal Sciences Institute with a diploma in feline behavior science and technology, JR has worked with municipal humane societies, nonprofit rescues, and private clients, while also having the honor of presenting at international conferences, including Zuspensful's Cooperative Care Conference 2021, Lieben mit Hunden Conference on Cooperative Care and the Animal Training Center, exploring the scientific versus the assumed cat. JR continues to routinely speak at shelters and rescues on issues of feline welfare and education. He serves as a current instructor at Tromplo, lives in Rochester, New York, with his incredible clouder of Durga and Poe, who I'm sure will make appearances tonight, and is fortunate enough to have a day job as a registered nurse where learning and teaching abound. JR's current behavior interests revolve around antecedent environmental arrangement, cooperative care approaches, the interplay between motivations and rates of probability, and exploring student-centered learning along with the function of gamification. If you felt like you needed a dictionary after that, don't worry. JR is going to explain it all to us. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Emily, hello there. And
Hi.
everyone, thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you so much for everyone coming here, just spending time with us. I love the community, the interaction, the feedback loop of just learning, sharing insights and inspirations. And that's what I am here to do and to gain from everybody. So I'm excited for that as well. So thank you. Much appreciation and gratitude right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here tonight, sharing your time and your expertise and your knowledge. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say because I know one of my cats struggles a lot with encountering people outside. So I'm hoping after tonight, we'll have some tips and tricks that we can employ to make our adventures less stressful and more fun. Before we get started, I just want to remind viewers to say hello in the comments. And if you're watching with us, go ahead and take a screenshot and post it to your Instagram stories. You can tag us at KittyCatGO Adventures and the Cognitive Cat. I've got our handles down on the ticker below. I do love your shirt. Cool cats and kittens everywhere.
We got the Adventure Cats hat rocking. We have to for such convos. So
yes, absolutely. Well, let's kick things off. I know I just read your bio and introduced you, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your cats, and the things that you do, explaining some of those terms that were in your bio?
Yeah, no, certainly. And first and foremost, it's all about the cats. So I'll talk about them, certainly first and foremost. And that is what I'll do right now. So the clouder right now consists of Durga, who's my bottle fed babe. She's long hair, blue, who's right about 13 years old. And then Poe, who you saw earlier, that little calico miscreant there who is off doing something else now. And Poe is about, gosh, I don't even like to think about it, but I think about 5 or something. So it's like heart be still moment. I won't get all emotional here, but we recently lost Condi, our almost 16-year-old from the cloud, about July 1st, so we're dealing with that. So talk about behavior and really watching the process of grief, and then really being a part of that and being there for yourself, and kind of it's always a fascinating thing watching ourselves in that kind of lens. So that's the clouder, and they're just fantastic, and that's kind of the resin de tree why we're doing everything we're doing right now. And well, beyond that, for education, much in the same way that we gain such insights and inspirations from the community, and that helps us to plan and then really set up for success with that next approximation. We hope to offer a bit of modicum of what we're getting back. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and you too in this podcast is doing amazing things for welfare and education. So thank you, and everyone who's here for putting out those ripples. So we're all here for the cats. So enough said about them, because I'm sure they'll be back and stepping on the keyboard in a few minutes and all that. But yeah, I really kind of I find myself here probably because I tended to eventually I have, the cognitive cat, this business now, but it all really started in rescue. It all started with a cat named Bambi when I was 6. But anyway, it all started in rescue, and you can tell with the Disney movie that I was watching then. So rescue was what really led me to the feline population. Mom was always an animal lover, and she went to the shelter and just would take me along. And I just had, she always, it was me who first really pushed and said, oh, can we get a cat? And just had this fascination with that species. And she assented, being a type of Dr. Doolittle mom, was like, oh, sure. So we did that. Everyone was spayed, neutered. I love to say that because that's a huge, important thing for me. And that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing a lot too, with just the way population is and all the trap, neuter, return, maintains out there. Much love and support. But yeah, so we kind of came through the shelter, and in that way, cats are an underserved population. Dogs are certainly in certain states, but cats are almost in every state still. And there are species certainly which are below them too. I mean, we can think about maybe guinea pigs and hamsters and so rats, but they're my population I'm honing in on. So seeing that in shelters really affected me, and we've gotten, I think, better as a nation. It's a struggle right now with resources, but working towards a no euthanasia nation. So that's kind of what got me where I am now, just that passion, that connection with felines through shelter work. And then kind of in my personal life, I didn't really go that trend. I was originally, a major in something different. Now I'm a nurse, but I always wanted to stay in touch with kind of the animal world and the felines. I was always working in rescue with that. And some of it was just wanting to be able to feel like I could support them too financially. And that's just what nursing has allowed in many ways, allowed a lot of places to go with it too. But it's been a wonderful profession, stressful. But a job the last 2 or 3 years. Hey, and I will always keep punching in. So, that's the nice thing about it. Talk about job security. But anyway, so that's where, but they go hand in hand in so many ways, because nursing is so much about teaching. It's about working with that communication, that empathetic understanding relationship, which is the same thing we're doing with cats or another species, through really making a lexicon, a dialogue of communication, much like we are with a patient or with a friend or a family member. So that's, not long-winded to get there, but kind of shelter. And then the nursing buttressed right off that. I was always doing a little bit with the shelter, with rescue in our area, really working more. I worked at a nonprofit for a few years. And really, what I like to do more, my capacity is just kind of going there and helping with menial tasks, but at the same time helping with behavioral stuff, and then also working with what we would call maybe more clicker training modalities, just kind of operant based reinforcement, positive reinforcement based contingencies, meaning just kind of within that framework that we're asking for a behavior, whether it's just a high five, a target, I'm getting a reinforcer. And we know there's evidence that shows that shelter cats who have engaged in those programs are spending more time at the front of their cages. They're not caving as much. They're exploring more. So there's definitely some wonderful data to back that up, that just, as long as we're clicking right. So yeah, that's just a wonderful thing. I think that got me kind of here. And then I just kept pushing it. Animal Training Academy was a huge thing on my journey. Shout out to them, Ryan Cartledge. A huge reason to where I am today, the support and just that community, the love, the ripples, the support. You have a wonderful community too. And there's so many, communities, grassroots growing up. And animal training, I like to think, has about since 2017 for me been that really vanguard at the front in terms of just the love within the community, the support, the way that the modeling takes place. And there needs to be no enforcement. The behavior, everyone's just so constructive and so growth oriented. So much love to that community and other communities out there too. And I could go on and on with those, but I know that's so. But anyway, kind of that's where I am now. Getting in that frame, just kind of kept exploring, talking to people, learning more, and then putting out videos that just kind of resonated. And we are watching a lot of videos and still are that resonate with us that others are putting out. So it's a wonderful feedback loop. But yeah, and then they, just kind of having wonderful conversations with other cat lovers or laurophiles and trainers, and trying to make little networks and kind of help promote and get each other. And here I am, I guess, just kind of coming on feeds and trying to get on those reels, so
Yeah.
Hope picks all the music, blame her.
Well, I do love your videos on Instagram. They're always very educational and entertaining, and interesting to watch. So I appreciate the content you're putting out. It's really quality, and I think, like you said, we're all trying to, advocate for cats and show what they're capable of, and you do a really great job of that with your account. So thank you for
Much.
that.
I'll say one more shout out, just real quick, to Animal Sciences Institute there, the Companion Sciences Institute, where I did get the certification. That's a wonderful program as well. James O'Hare, that man is like a genius. The guy's like a Krav Maga master, like a master chef. He's running this program, and he's like skateboarding like at 50 and doing crazy Tony Hawk things.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so, real interesting guy. He's written quite a bunch of books on aggression. I come at things from a very behavior analytical way, and that's how he does. We're looking at behavior, not so much psychology. We're looking at and I'm just going to say this because I think it really sets this up well. And thank you too for mentioning some of the words there. Antecedent arrangement, pretty much what we're talking about, environmental arrangement. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about, I think, tonight. The environment, how it's arranged. Another wonderful thinker and just shaker and mover out there, Dr. Jesus Rosales Ruiz from North Texas University. I forget who he said this to, but he always says these wonderful back hall things at Clicker Expo cons that people always say and get out and podcasts and other type of web jams. But he said, it's not behavior modification. And this, so often I'm thinking, in modifying behavior, he said it's environmental modification. That's what we're doing. Not modifying it, we're modifying the environment, and then the behavior, we set that up to make it more probable or for success, or the probabilities of that reinforcer now working. And it's so true. So I want us to consider that, because when we're talking tonight, behavior is something that we're seeing observably, and that's how it's affecting us emotionally a lot of the time with these challenges. And it's affecting our cats, but it's really environmental modification. So I want us all to think about that, opposed to just that behavior. Why is it happening? Why is it occurring? It's not in a vacuum, and that is that world around us. So I'll kind of start off with that, the antecedent arrangement. And gamification, I think we're going to get into now. That's a really neat kind of term I think we're going to be seeing more of. Just kind of, for me, that's the interaction, or the way that we can I love, these little apps where you can earn badges, and I check in every day. Oh, I did my meditation daily. I'll check in. I'm getting that. I'm just a freak for stuff like that. So you do something like that, I'll probably be pretty good about it, and it builds my habits. So for me, doesn't work for everybody. There's different modalities, but there are some things we're going to talk about which could be a sort of gamification in terms of the interplay we have with the world, that interactivity where it doesn't have any less meaning, even more meaning in an existential way, where now we are choosing our own destiny for sure, and we are the character within our role-playing game. And maybe it'll change tomorrow, the setting, but I want us to keep that in mind too. So kind of environmental modification and gamification are how we are interacting with the world that's reinforcing us in a way that's giving it meaning, and yet at the same time making us competitive against ourselves, not in a bad way, but in a way that I want to grow more tomorrow than I did today. I want to be more vulnerable, more authentic, and also spread out more ripples. So that's what I'll start and leave us with. And I'm going to get talking, and I'm not even keeping in my notes anymore. So I haven't even started looking at them. So we're in trouble. I think I just wanted to shout out James O'Hare. Check him out at Companion Animal Sciences Institute. And I think that's enough said.
Okay, well, thank you for all of that. It's very interesting. So let's start. Well, before, I guess my first question, before we start talking about introducing our cats to people and the kind of situations that might cause stress or fear, I think it's really important that we, as the cat guardians, know our cats. We know their cues. We know when to recognize when they're fearful or stressed or nervous or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about how to recognize what are the behaviors we should keep an eye out for to know if we should be concerned about how our cats are feeling?
Yeah, really excellent question, Emily. I appreciate that. And it's so true that that's kind of the baseline of the whole existence of this conversation in many ways. Otherwise, we can have the conversation, but we can't really apply it to anything. So, and I think you brought up a really salient point that I actually didn't know to write down, but I think it's an important one, a baseline. And we necessarily have a sense of what that baseline is until we understand what the behavior may be. And behavior, again, it's happening not in a vacuum, but because of what's going on around it. So keep that in mind, what's going around occurrences before and even distantly before, maybe a history of this. If the garbage truck's always coming at the same time, and maybe the cat's running and hiding, we're seeing that behavior and the occurrence of it recurring at a certain time usually. So kind of the baseline of how we're interacting with stimuli in the home, and then we can extrapolate a little bit and work with that. But with that baseline, we got to recognize to begin with. And I think I'm going to use, for me, a big one is know your resources, because I don't know it all. I didn't know it all. I mean, I can just sit here and say this, this, and this, and I may do a little bit of that. But at the same time, there are some excellent resources that I find that are really pertinent to this conversation. And nowadays, there's nothing really better than, an illustrated graphic. Cat behavior has been hard to really find and get in pages. I mean, there's some wonderful books in the last 20 years from Zazie Todd's recent Purr to, Jackson Galaxy's had some great ones with Michael Delgado, to even going back for, and other Pam Johnson Bennett. I always forget her name so wrong, so I so apologize. And even going further back to like Paul Lee Housen. I finally tracked that darn book down. That was expensive, but that, not original printing, but that early book kind of really delving into the behavior in a really ethological way. We don't need it necessarily in that dense sense. We just need it sort of to observe and kind of extrapolate. And again, that's going to be baseline. And I think it was Dr. Susan Friedman, who said there's more variation on a bell curve within a species than there is between species. And with that said, you know what? Maybe there's a lot of strange physiological neurochemical disorders out there. Maybe when your cat is hissing with puffed up fur, it really is happening. I mean, but as a context, we know what this behavior signifies as a whole, as a baseline, as a probability indicator. So I want to start with that too, because everything's a study of one, but due to having the recurrence of a certain behavior in certain circumstances, and I will say too, behavior is happening for really four functions. There's it's happening to really access something or escape something, right? To direct access, either I want this water right here, or socially, you have the water, I want the water from you. Hey, I just want to talk to you. Maybe you'll give me some water. And then there's escaping, maybe I don't want the water. You've been waterboarding me. Get out of here. I'm running from the water, an aversive task in the water. I hate swimming. I don't want to go near that pool. Maybe I have a cut and the chlorine hurts me. So there's escape in these access, and they are vary between just us within ourselves and socially what we're trying to access. So I think if we break it down and just look, is the animal trying to access or escape? That's a good starting route. And I think that really acts as a nice segue to get us into the conversation and to apply some of those more tried and true behaviors that say, oh, that traditional Halloween cat pose, that cat is definitely not wanting to be pet. I mean, that humorous thing that, oh, the cat's wagging its tail at me, or, oh, the cat's rubbing over, it wants its belly to be pet. I mean, these old, ridiculous things that get people on a 10-day course of antibiotics and a nice stay in ED for 9 hours wait there. But so if we think about that, there's access and escape. So let's think contextually within that. So I want to put that out there. And I'm going to jump back to the resources, though, because I didn't mention those. So resources, some I'll say is, one I love is icatcare.org. I think that's the International Society of Feline Medicine, ISFM. Cats Protection's another really good one. Catvets.com. That's the AAFP, American Association of Feline Practitioners. And fearfree.com, fearfreepets.com. They have wonderful resources all there to recognize behavior, which we'll talk about a little bit more in that context. But I want to mention those because they have a really nice, there's a spectrum, which we're going to mention on the fearfreepets.com that is really good to kind of use as a barometer. And I will also shout out one more thing. I think probably some of us have this one already. Kitty Language is another great one. I mean, talk about a wonderful visual book. Sometimes it's a little tough to read through and really, what's the behavior? But it's wonderful to just look. And Lily really nails it with a lot of the subtlety and everything. And I mean, right, you could have 10,000 books like that, but it's really a wonderful start and so much to build off and so much right there to start off. What a wonderful starting block to just keep adding to the lexicon of. So know your resources. Those are some that I would say I like. There's others out there. You may have your own, and that's awesome, but just know your resources. And I'm going to talk about the FAS scale, the fear, anxiety, what's that last one? Stress scale spectrum. And that's one that's used a lot in the veterinary clinic. And it's a lot of what we're talking about we'll see that access or escape. But if we're really looking at, it goes from green to yellow to red. And as it progresses to red, we see things like, usually I think of the body being, some things I'll look at are the face, the torso, the extremity, the tail, and the coat too. So now when I'm thinking about the face, I'm thinking about, again, access or escape. Are the whiskers going away or two? Are the ears going away or two? Is the lean going away or two? And then, of course, we're looking at pupils. Are they dilated? If we're seeing the whiskers come towards and leaning towards, well, that is certainly an exploratory thing. And sometimes we're exploring what may hurt us. So that needs to be, the guardian needs to be there and say, but looking at those subtle features of the face, if the ears are kind of tucking back and inclining, if that head's tucking down into the shoulders. So looking at that, looking at the extremity or at the body, if its torso is becoming tucked, I think, that beautiful stride when you're seeing the cat walk elongated and the tail's held up and stretched out, not so much stretch, but that elongation of motion and dynamism, that dynamic fluidity of motion, as opposed to that real static crunchiness when we're tense. And then
Mhm.
when our are tucked under, when we're ready to run away at a moment's notice. And then certainly the tail. Is that tail tucked? Are we keeping it close to us to protect us? Is it in the coat? Is it puffing out? Is it staying there? We can definitely note piloerection, and I think when we see that, that's a barometer that we probably should have noticed a few signs early. So when we can notice those subtle signs, just maybe the whiskers just kind of going back, just kind of the hesitation, the lean back, the Brad pose for a little bit, with
Oh,
as if I was just pose like, yeah, I'm going to come and show some body language of just kind of access right here. Talk about accessing time, FaceTime. So, um, yeah, so looking at some of those things, and I want to pass over if you have anything to add or interject, because I'll keep going here. But I kind of think using that spectrum, that fear, anxiety, stress spectrum, really, I like to hone in again on the face, on kind of the torso, the extremities, if they're ready to run, on the tail, on the coat. So looking at that, and then behavior is a total different thing. I mean, these are going to be precursors to what behavior we're going to see, or the indicators of what behavior we did see. It's that
yeah.
old, and I don't know to speak on it. I probably shouldn't even get into it, but because I think there is an answer that Joe Lang provided. But the idea: are we afraid because we're running from the bear, or are we running from the bear because we're afraid?
Mm, I got it. Yeah. I really like the point you brought up about noticing if their behaviors are pointing to or going away. I hadn't really thought of those motions, like with their ears or their whiskers, as pointing to or going in the direction that they are wanting to go. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I always think of those whiskers as just, I mean, the vibrissae are just such amazing. I mean, as we learn more, just wondering what they are really. Another wonderful book of Ed Young, An Immense World, really awesome, exploring the Umwelt, which is just a German term for our experience, our sensorial experience of everything around us. And it's very fascinating seeing all this information relayed through a plethora of other species. But just thinking about those whiskers like tentacles. That's why they're out there exploring. If they're near a mouse, they're feeling that when they're making that bite killer. That they're little graspers in a way that almost ghost graspers, where they do a lot
Mhm.
at the same time. They won't be the ones that get you in the end, but they'll get you.
Yeah, I think too, knowing all these general behaviors and what they might signify and mean is important, but also knowing our specific cats, maybe their little idiosyncrasies or things, that they may do a little bit differently than another cat. Because just like, my facial expressions are a little bit different than yours, are different from, the people watching or listening. And we really have to know our cats if we're going to be doing all these activities with them, taking them outside, expecting all of this um I don't know what the word is, but all of this behavior that's just more than just sitting around at home. We have to know each other, have that bond and that sense of trust to recognize things like, for example, purring, right? Everyone thinks about purring as a signifier of happiness and contentment, but it can also be a self-soothing technique if the cat is scared or stressed. And so being able, to recognize, well, my cat's purring, is it because they're comfortable and happy, or is it because they're scared or stressed? But knowing your cat on that deeper level will help you to be able to determine those things a little bit better.
I love that. And I think that speaks to context so much. If my cat's purring at the vet, it's probably, maybe a little more of a self-soothing, or the
Mhm.
other of the end of the life purring, that really gets you. It's like that self-soothing also. But great point, and it's knowing the environment. And I think you make a great point, because I think about, do I want to go on a road trip with a friend that I barely know their idiosyncrasies? Heck no.
Yeah.
So I think the more we know about our cat, the more we set them up for success. As you're saying, we want them to have these immersive experiences in the world around with us to build more trust and relationality, but setting them up is to it. And I think you make such a salient point with that. It comes down to observation. In the
Mhm.
same way, I'm like, oh, I should always just be wearing my treat pouch. I just clicking is easier. That's just easier than me having a verbal marks. That's what I use. But I should have that and just capture and catch stuff more. I don't, but it's the same way. And having that homework, having a little notebook. Oh, my cat's kind of looking weird out the window at something. Go look and see maybe what's out there. Maybe that male person's walking by. Maybe there's, someone closing a door. So I think that's such a great point. And the more we know, the more data we have, the more we can set them up for success and plan for more success using that data
Mhm.
in a graded way, incorporated into our planning. So true. And knowing our cat individually, and like you said, it's just observation, and that's just having a journal. Get an observation journal. Find a beautiful journal in Etsy and run with it.
There you go. That's a good idea. Business idea for someone. So going or I guess piggybacking on the thought about cats having their own individual expressions and how they may I guess express themselves, being a little redundant. Um Cats have different personalities, and some are more social and more accepting of people than others, and some are more fearful of strangers. What kind of steps or training would you recommend for getting a cat more comfortable with a new person that's coming into their home? Maybe a friend or family member is coming over, or you're at home in the comfort of your home. How can you work to get your cat more comfortable with those interactions?
Yeah, another wonderful question, and one that's very salient in all our lives, and one that I think we can all speak of. We've had great interactions with, and probably some that we thought, oh, I want to set that up for more success next time. And I think a lot of that is planning. Don't be spontaneous with it to begin with. Have a plan in place. Have a location that you're going to set this meeting arrangement up. And to begin with, that's going to offer a nice spacious room. That's somewhere the cat's going to be already have a nice positive social conditioning history, not, the room where we do nail clipping, the place where we never go except for when I bring this person over. So setting that up for success, I think also exploring some scent soakers previous, if we can, maybe get an olfactory item of from the person, a scent, and bring that home a little bit, just incorporate that in ways too. And by ways, I mean just literally having it around and having a play session just in a random point. If the cat comes and sniffs it on the floor, cool. Not necessarily like next to the food bowl or up in the face, just in a
Mhm.
random, more like are not going to come sniff it. So I think stuff like that is not harmful to begin with, and knowing the location, knowing the person, and kind of pre-gaming them to having a conversation. Hey, I'm working with this, but can you please be, and the things I'll usually do when I'm working to kind of begin that communication, start that build that barrier, build that trust initially in relationality is I'm quiet, I get small, I lunge down, I get small. I mean, you can be sitting. I don't stare. I think we can talk about soft eyes and kind of giving
Mhm.
that oh blink,
Mhm.
uh, not not approaching, not picking up. Or I see a lot. The other one I see is, sometimes when I'll go for consults, people will say, I'll just come in and I'll sit, and I never, intend or expect to see the cat. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I'm just there to observe and get a report, and maybe they have some videos, see the environment, and then we can see what happens. And some cats are all over you, some you really don't see. But a lot of times owners will say, oh, let me go get him and I'll bring him and put it. No, 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 no. So I think that's one thing, letting it happen on its own time. If you bring
Mhm.
someone that can the other room, that idea again of access or approach. But with that, I think, setting that up for success, working with the location, with the olfaction, pre-gaming the person a little bit. And if I'm missing anything too, please add, because I think I'm, but let me know. I will keep going. So like, but I think also game plan with them. Hey, this is kind of what we're gonna do. Maybe we're gonna do it for this long. Also, cat music is not a bad idea. There's some good data that shows. I forget, but I want to say like decibel, or I forget what the frequency is, but they're classical, and then like David T. cat music type stuff. Keep
Mhm.
knocking like out. But that's a nice thing to have in the background to set the mood, right? Um, but I think pre-gaming the person, saying, hey, please come in, just sit on the couch. I'm gonna, try to maybe have a little play session or something like that. I'm gonna just put a little food in the corner and we'll see, or I'm gonna do a little clicker session, or just come in, let's just talk. Let's not try to do anything. Let's just turn on the TV and act naturally, as Ringo Starr said, and maybe that means that you watch TV at a certain time every night. We'll have that person come over at that time when it's going to be a predictable routine. You mentioned predictability and probable rates. And what I mean by that a lot, like in the bio, is rates that we're accessing reinforcers. Like cat grass is a good one I use. I don't give my cats just free range to it, or they'd be barfing over and there'd be no cat
Yeah.
grass left. So that's one thing I can control the value of by giving it to them a certain amount during, which sets a baseline rate. And if I vary from it, if it's motivating, it's going to have either more value if I cut the rate down, or less value, maybe, if I cut the rate up. Probably that's what our, what evidence seems, data and behavior science seems to show with how that would work with probabilities and MOs and decreasing and increasing. So thinking about that in terms of what are those really salient reinforcers for my cat? What's the routine that I'm doing that time of day, the rhythm? I love just, I mean, Jackson, the two things I always will think of that Jackson Galaxy gave and I always use is routine, rhythm, ritual. I think that means different for me now than it really probably what it meant for him, but might be the same still. But the routine of the day, and then it gets in that rhythm, and then it's, I think, just ritualize those weird little things we do with our cats. Hey, pooping, like have those weird ritual moments as opposed to just a normal routine like everyone of brushing the teeth. But when are you having those? What's your routine? What are the energy patterns throughout the day? When are you doing your play? If you're scheduled feeding, that's awesome. It's getting that again, Jackson Galaxyism. Hunt, catch, kill, eat, groom, sleep. When is that energy high? When is it low? And we can work with that when we're bringing guests over. Probably not a good idea to bring them over first thing in the morning before the cat eats, or right when you're getting home at work, when the busiest time. Let the energy pattern diminish, let it sink, let this unpredictable predictability come. So I think kind of saying that, and I think I probably could offer more, but I'm going to pass it to you. And I say one person at a time too, even though I hold up two fingers. Yeah, take over for a minute because I'm going to get a sip of water anyway.
Sure. Well, I like your point about prepping the person, right? I think so often we're thinking about, well, what can I do for my cat? What can I do for my cat? Well, one of the best things you can do for your cat is to help the person. So many people, if they didn't grow up with cats or have never really spent that much time around them, they might not know about how to handle a cat, how to pet a cat. It's different than a dog. You know, if someone's used to dogs, then their interactions with a cat might not go so well, right? So that's such a great point. We have to explain to the people, make sure they understand, don't approach, give the soft eyes, like the slow blink, like you mentioned. Coaching the person can make such a big difference, because if a stranger, or a stranger to the cat, but maybe friend or family to you, comes into the home and just goes at them or tries to pick them up or whatever, that can set things back so much. And then you're going to have to try to, fix things rather than start off with a good interaction right from the beginning.
Totally. And, I've been talking about the people, we'll talk about the felines in a minute. I totally was going to say something and it went out of my mind, but I do laugh because a lot, even working, everyone knows when you're in the shelter, you're in rescue, you're fostering. A lot of times people will be like, oh, try to pick it up. And I think, I wouldn't want to be picked up if I met you for the first time. I wouldn't want to be picked up if I'm hanging out with you for the 10th year. Don't pick any, like, I love that idea too, that we tend to, and it's not, I'm not judging it, but we tend to objectify, the cats in that way as something to pick up and to be held in that way, as opposed to a lot of the adventure cat mindset, whether you are out on trails or pushing stuff in your living room. Amazingly, just working with a licky mat to get to an amazing vaccination at the vet. We're pushing cats in wonderful, not pushing, we're finding out what cats are in wonderful new ways, but we're pushing against this assumption of what cats are and really saying, no, cats are an individual. They're not in the same way that dogs are. Cats are not, they're not just this juxtaposed species with dogs. And that's how we view cats and dogs. There's so much more, and they are such individuals. So I think that's so important to say. But yeah, having a plan for the person kind of coming in, and then, my brain's still farting when I was going to think of, but then also, prepping the cat. There's things we can, if it's that routine, if it's a certain time we're doing things, we could have a play session in the hallway. We don't have to be in that room. We can, incrementally bring to the room, lead to the room with the, some great wand toys out there, lead to the room with that wand toy, kind of flood and then come right back. So it's not pushing it. We're just going to the boundary and going right back, toss a treat away. So what I love to do is encourage approach, and then behaviors. And then usually food works well if we're eating. Eating's a great barometer, right? Am I eating in the presence of a stranger? Always a great barometer, but most of the time in the homestead, if I'm eating, I'm pretty comfortable when there's a stranger at a good distance. So the other thing is we could, have the cat come approach towards us, do a target touch, toss a treat away, approach back towards us. We don't have to be sitting with the person. We can be 30 feet away. But that idea that the cat's just approaching back to the space, I love stuff like that because it's really empowering, but we're not going up to the point, because sometimes what may happen is you can toss a treat the other way, see if the cat will go approach, and maybe that cat will just walk by and go up to the person. Have them once or twice. So novel things in the environment that have been there for a little bit of time and are not threatening, usually are to be explored. I think, And now I did think of, you made me think of the other thing we can do, and not to be pedantic to people. I'm sure people don't want to come over and hear us just go, oh, my cat is doing this and this. But I think it's also, I was listening to your wonderful podcast today about dealing with dogs and walks, because I wanted to
Mm.
get some information, see if that could inform a little bit of what I'm sharing. And it definitely did. And in some different ways. But I do think about that as just how we can share with dog guardians, or maybe that person doesn't have a cat, but they have a dog who comes over, how to share with them body language of a cat. Hey, look how Poe's doing. She's kind of comfortable. Well, she's like kind of neutral. She's not sure. You see how her whiskers, and she's kind of looking around, but she's kind of like this. She's not, so you can really, you can really reason that through with them, operationalize that, right? And the behavior of it. And, oh, why is she doing that? Oh, look, there's a fly she's looking at. So I think that's a great way to, not normalize, because we don't, it's like cats, no, but it's a great way to personalize and individualize our felines, and to spread that welfare and education out to the community, someone who may not have had that knowledge. So again, we don't want to be like, come over and for half an hour, I'm just going to tell you about my cat's behavior. Some synchronous reinforcement to the person, meaning, hey, give them chocolate, something they can kind of do, and have some music on, maybe they like too. But but yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff I'm definitely overlooking. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I really like your suggestions on activities that give the cat the choice to come out and not forcing them, because I think so often, as you mentioned, we think, oh, you want to see my cat? Let me go get them. And then we pick them up and we bring them out. And if your cat isn't wanting to do it, then you've just set your cat up for a negative experience and possibly made them more nervous or want to run further when people come in your house. I think it's so important that we give our cat the choice. We give them the option. And if they want to take it, great. And maybe they'll even go further than we thought. Like you mentioned, you throw a treat. Maybe they, instead of coming and going right back, they come and go a little further towards the person. But it's all on their terms, on their timeline, and by their choice, and we're not forcing it on them.
Less is definitely more a lot, and I think sometimes, and same thing with training sessions, you should just be happy with the approximation you have and end it, and the session signal transition to something good, as opposed to really wanting that last one and maybe just breaking the bank a little bit in a way you just didn't get the history, or it just was a little bit that's not so tasty, that's a little poison. So totally on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that getting a cat comfortable with new people out in public spaces is a bit different than with friends or family who might be coming into your home. I know one of the biggest struggles many people who adventure with their cats have is encountering other people when they're out exploring with their cats. So many are fearful of passing strangers out on the trail or wherever they're exploring. And I know that's true for one of my cats, and it can kind of ruin the experience for the cat. Like, for example, my cat Kylo, if we're out, I purposely choose to go hiking places where I'm not likely to run into someone else. And if we do happen to run into someone else, well, he wants in his backpack, and that's usually it. He won't want to come back out again. And obviously that's not an ideal situation. And I know that's a common problem that a lot of people have. What steps can someone take to acclimate their cat to other people so they're more comfortable encountering them outside of the home?
Well, first off, I love the name Kylo. uh, Coming across Han Solo, I'm sure he's probably running at him, but
That's right.
love it. Great question. And I'm going to take some stuff I'm going to offer for this will also be applicable to, I think, the last question we're going to ask, and vice versa. But what I would say is, much like we're modifying the environment, consider that plan first. I'm a big planner. Plan, get data, and kind of have, you don't have to make a flow chart necessarily. If you do, please, all the more power and brownie points. But just kind of have a sense of what you're going to do. If this happens, if A happens, I'll do B. If C happens, I'll do D. If the hits the fan, I'll turn the off switch. So have an idea kind of what you're going to do, and gracefully be able to do that and feel comfortably mechanically to do that, whatever that means. Because it's, not good that, when the emperor's going out without any clothes, and everyone kind of knows that. And when you realize that, it's a really scary moment in those cases when our cats are out in the as Cat Stevens said, the wild world here. I think he said that. I can't remember that. So I don't know if I'm quoting that song right now, but anyway, so start planning, start considering that, have an idea. I don't want to say an escape route because we don't want to plan. We want to plan for escape, but we want to say have a flow chart, have an idea. And then with that starting, I think starting small just in your garage, in
Mm.
your drive, in your yard, work with your neighborhood and your neighbors, work with your significant others and your family and have them kind of walk by in those ways. And you could be even in the doorway starting off in that way and very incrementally and graded before we're necessarily moving to generalize to the woods to, to put that same kind of behavior, put that same scenario there and expect the same behavior. Maybe we get in the
Mhm.
comfort of our own driveway. So I would say starting that because that's going to also get you baseline data. And if you are first adventuring, that's a great way to do it. Just get a sense of, and we probably all are. That's where we're probably walking the cats to begin with. I don't imagine starting off driving them to Adirondacks, the first one,
Yeah.
and then make sure I have a playlist downloaded. I know that well now because there's no service. But anyway, that's but no, for real. So I think start use the environmental controls you have around you that are going to be most applicable to working with you. Meaning, not just that person driving the loud car down the road, but oh, my mom driving a quiet car down the road or someone walking. So find those resources, use them, and then start out in your driveway, in your garage, in your yard. And what I think is effective to start out. You can do, I mean, we could always say you could have a play session, you could do treat scatters, you could do just general clicker training, targets, high fives, stuff like that, very high predictable behaviors. But I think what even might be more applicable and effective in this case is something called, we're going to talk a little bit, not completely, but I like kind of equating them in some ways, pattern games. A wonderful concept that Leslie McDevitt offered through Control Unleashed. I definitely recommend everyone check out her stuff. Amazing. So I don't know if but we all heard of pattern games, but they can be very powerful for helping in environments that are a little more unpredictable to offer a sense of predictability. And I'm going to read a quote of Leslie because I think she really does it well here. My own idea kind of how I would put them as a series of repetitive, predictable, and reliable environmental arrangements and contextual cues. So we're arranging the environment with maybe different signifiers. A signifier could be, hey, come over here and touch this target. If you see this target, access to reinforcements open. It could be, signifier hand, stay there maybe. So cues, the cat could be cueing us. We're going to talk maybe a little bit about that. But Leslie kind of really articulately phrases this as pattern games as a repetitive, predictable framework of cues and behaviors that helps the learner process the environment by weaving the unexpected into a safety net of the expected. And I think that really articulates it nicely. That idea of a safety net and kind of weaving. I love that. The flowchart idea, kind of that spider web of many strands. And there are many we can do, and they're very simple. Really, what a pattern game is just working with the environment around us and establishing a flow of movement. It could be dynamic. I mean, it could be going back and forth. It could be stationary, remaining in place, just sitting up and down. So I think, and we can talk about some, I think that once I'm kind of out of the house, getting a little comfortable, just eating food out of the house on the doorstep, because that's going to be the thing. We're working with food in a lot of these cases. Again, we could work with cat grass, could work with the smell of dirt. I could work with a crinkly leaf. I always think this is the idea of probability and predictability. Know your reinforcers and know the rates they're being accessed at, because they're probably going to be more valuable if they're not having a high rate of access. So keep that in mind, especially on your outings, because they're going to be a good barometer indicating how, I'm not trying to like comfortable a cat is, but where we are on, let's say, that FAS spectrum. They're going to be a good way, besides just looking at the observable body language, to see, are you going to maybe eat this high value treat or a low value treat? So keep that in mind. But yeah, I'm going to turn it over, see what you think. But that's kind of where my mind's going with, once we're able to get outside and eat outside comfortably, just in the doorstep, in the garage area, on the driveway, without maybe running back if a car goes by or if people are out, then we can start thinking about putting a framework onto there and kind of giving some meaning to that world.
Yeah, the high value treat in the cat adventure community, that is usually those like to be
Yeah.
squeezy true treats, and I use those a lot, as you said, to gauge how my cat's feeling. If he will take a treat, then I know that he's okay. He may be
Yeah.
a little nervous, but he's still taking treats, so he's not too scared. But if he refuses a treat, then okay, well, I know we've kind of reached higher level of stress and nervousness, and I need to do something about it, change the situation, try to do something to make him feel more calm and comfortable. Um, I also like your tip about the pattern game, something predictable that they can, um, I guess, expect in an environment that is unpredictable. Do you have any examples of a game, like that we could do with our cats?
Definitely. I came prepared, and I thought of some that are, there's quite a few out there. And honestly, these they're wonderful because how universal they are, but at the same time, once you're kind of understanding what you're doing, you can, and it's not complex really, right? You're working to much in the same way to pair something in a respondent way, and then really turn it into an operationalized exercise. So meaning really you're pairing an association. You could just be kind of, we'll talk about that, we'll see that, and I'll talk through how we're kind of doing that. But yes, I do have some I can offer. The first one I'll say is the 1, 2, 3. We'll do that one first. That's a great one for generating motion. Initially, what you would do is kind of say, you could do it a few ways. You could teach it by just literally saying 3 and then give the treat to the cat. Then there's kind of that classical respondent conditioning, just kind of stimuli, neutral stimuli, and then a primary, really a food coming to them, an unconditional stimulus coming to the, or yeah, an unconditional stimulus coming to them, and the reinforcer. So that's how we would start it. Just say 3, kind of give that treat, and then you can back chaining, meaning just putting the steps backwards. So instead of going up step 1, 2, 3, we're kind of going down 3, 2, 1. Reason we would do that is we could do it. You could say 1, 2, 3, give them the treat, but some people may say it's a little more airless just to do 3 treat. Then once you do that a few times, add a 2, 3, or you do 2, 3 treat, and then add that 1 incrementally. But you could start off 1, 2, 3 treat. So that's pairing that stimulus initially of the 3 with the treat, and then putting motion. And go ahead.
Are these numbers 1, 2, 3, are these representing a behavior that you're asking them to do?
They will be in a second. Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's awesome. That's a wonderful segue, because literally, not to be corny, but that's the next step.
Oh.
So 1, 2, 3 is really about 3 steps. And what that means is we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And well, first off, what we should be seeing, right, when we're pairing that stimulus, when we're saying 3, giving the treat, what we should then see is the head come back up and orient towards us, or there should be some orientation once that understanding of a pattern is in place. So that's what we're kind of looking for our cat to do. If it's just kind of, we're randomly eating a treat and they're just staying down there, and then we're just getting to 3. So kind of waiting and seeing if we do get that sit up a little bit and maybe just look towards us, or any subtle movement that we can kind of use to develop that kind of communication of, oh, okay, I'm doing this. So that is kind of what we're initially looking for. But once we see that, once we're going 1, 2, 3, treat down, head kind of comes back up. Okay, 1, 2, or when the head's coming up at 3, then we can kind of take in steps. So initially on the 1, 2, we're just going to be walking forward, and then on the 3, the head will look up, stop, put a treat down, and then we can do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. On that 3, we stop and put that treat down. And generally, the cat's going to be stopping on the 3 and looking for the treat too. So it's a way to cover space in a small way, but in a predictable pattern. So that's one I think that is nice to get moving initially out there. And it's hard to say it over a podcast. So there's wonderful, I can definitely share some resources. So let me know. But Leslie McDevitt has wonderful videos out there on YouTube with canines doing it too. And there might be some felines. This is Durga. So she heard 1, 2, 3. She's like, "Are we doing?" No, she's. But yeah, and if I fubbed anything saying it, but it's pretty much, we're just going to be pairing that 3 with the treat, and then the 1, 2 are really going to be the steps we're taking after that association is there for the cat. Oh yeah, 3. Look, I'm going to get something. Then on that 3, we're able to kind of use that to go across space in a predictable way when the anticipation is going to be in that 3, because it's almost like a chain, right? 1 is reinforcing 2 is reinforcing 3. Finally, I get the treat. So they're just secondary reinforcers. So really, in a way, I think, but someone may be like, it's not, but I think it's a chain in that way, because I think the 1 and 2 would be secondary reinforcers in a way. So I guess watch when you're counting around your cat, maybe in those ways too for a second. So with that, though, I'm kind of weird like this. Kay Lawrence has great points about this, but sing our cues. Kay Lawrence has a wonderful podcast, great dog trainer in the UK, a legendary dog trainer in the UK. But the idea of singing cues, she said she worked with someone who is a musician, and this idea of singing, otherwise in a monotone world, everything sounds the same. So if you're that word that's, yeah, at least do it in a different way. Yeah, like, or something crazy. I mean, I love our cue for Poe and I. We're working on like a whole behavior with our mouth, but we do bite it and Michael Jackson's beat it, bite it. So be creative with them and have fun, because you're going to memorize what you're having fun with. So I will say that with the 1, 2, 3, I know it's like, what, but it is weird. But if it, just enough said. I don't want to get down that rabbit hole too far.
So you're saying this 1, 2, 3 game is something that we should be doing at home, getting our cats to recognize this kind of chain at home, and then we take it out when we're out with them, and when they might be feeling stressed or uncomfortable, we try to replicate it and give them something that they're comfortable with and that they can predict, and that will help them to feel a little bit more comfortable.
100%. I think, and there's so many good resources out there that this is really something that we can use effectively. Jack from Jack and Jill Dog Training from Jill over there. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her. Hassevort, I think is how her last name is said. Has a wonderful. It's you type it in, Animal Training Academy, Jill Hassevort 1, 2, 3. You'll see a wonderful kind of case study from a few years ago of her working with this. I believe after Jack was a little traumatized by some idiot honking the horn in a truck driving by, or firecracker, but so yes, and it was very effective and powerful, and it's a wonderful case study. But at the same time, there's also wonderful charts from out there, and again, I can always share resources. But yes, I think it'd be very effective to do that one, which is that's going to be more a dynamic one. We're getting motion out of that, we're getting approach, or it's powerful to approach something, but it's also powerful to move away from something in a controlled manner with your back to it, not fleeing or looking. So consider that too a lot of times. Yeah, so I would say definitely getting that in home, and then I can share one more that's a little less motion.
Sure.
Okay. Which one? I think just the up down one would be, and that's literally, it would be like if I was sitting here, Durga's in front of me, I put a treat on the ground, wait for her to look up at me, just put another treat on the ground. You're waiting for that orientation, them to look up. You don't need a word necessarily, or you're not cueing anything like that. It's just self-cueing in that way. It's a start button in the way when she looks up, she's saying, you do this behavior, which is give me a treat. So you're a treat machine. But that can also be brought to like a look at me type thing. So if you're working on that, and again, distance. So I didn't bring this up. I took the word positive reinforcement out of my write-up a while ago, because I think there's value in negative reinforcement. We've seen that with cat procedures, with constructive aggressive treatment. Angela Renfro has done amazing things showing what can be done with feral cats in terms of community cats, and really getting over that hump. Because if the animal's functional reinforcer is space, once the animal is able to cue you to say, hey, yeah, you gave me the space, you can come back. Once animals are empowered to remove you from their space just with a look, then we can bridge over to positive reinforcement. So we think of negative reinforcement, I think a lot as, oh, the shock collar, and then what happened from that. But it's more of the idea of when the animal is wanting escape, and that's accessing as a functional reinforcer. We're using it that way to build up a relationship. So they say, hey, yeah, you're letting me escape, you're trusting me, look at this, this is awesome, I'm getting empowered from this. And I'm not saying you're chasing them and they're running. It means they're looking at you, you're leaving the room, maybe coming back 5 minutes later in the shelter setting. Wonderful stuff Caroline Crevier Shabbat also has with this to check out. Susan Friedman's talked eloquently on it. It's, we've seen it a lot with dogs, but I really think it's so powerful, especially with community cats, because it's much better than the hand method where I'm poking at the cat till it is just conditioned helpless and is just going to let me touch it because it has no other way but to sit there like the rat on the shocking tile, just being shocked, even though it can still get away easily. And thank God it's not biting, right, or hissing or attacking me, because I'd be in trouble. So considering that, I want to mention space, because space is an important thing. So if our cats are asking for space, listen to that, because that's going to allow you to work. You can remove yourself to a distance that's much like we see dog trainers doing with reactivity cases with either cat or Grisha Stewart's bat. They're being able to remove themselves and then use that space as a functional reinforcer to empower the dog. So use space too with that. So that's a nice another exploration to get down. But the up down can be used in that way when we either over space or close proximity for the cat to maybe. So the up down pattern is just you put it down, Durga would look up, I put another treat down, she eats it, looks back up, I put another treat down. Well, we can add something else into there. I could even have a pattern where maybe there's something in the environment, it's not highly potentiating or sensitizing, but it's just kind of, I'm looking around, I'm just kind of, well, that's awesome. Then what I can do if we're eating is you look over there at the person, you look back at me, bam, give you that treat. You look back at the person, look at me, bam, give you that treat. You can put the stimulus that might be a little bit off-putting on cue and actually make orienting towards that a way to access reinforcers. So not talking about a charging dog that's snarling, but just a nice mom in a stroller pushing the kid that's not trying by, So yeah, that's what I would think is so powerful about these, because then once you're in the pattern, you can use environmental cues and you can make these games up. I mean, you could have one where you're just sitting out at your cat, you're both looking, the cat looks at you, just give it a treat. It looks off again at the stimulate, just looks at you, give it a treat. So there's probably more I can say, and I'm leaving out about that, but I'll pass it back to you because I know I'm going to keep going. Can you hear me? I think you're muted. I haven't been muting at all, so hope I haven't been making noises.
You haven't been. My husband came in to feed the dog because the dog food is in my office, so I muted myself so you guys wouldn't hear the scooping of dog food.
That would have been a good time maybe for a pattern game for Durga. She would have been like, what was that? Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like those game ideas. They're simple, they're easy, they can be done, anywhere. All you need is a treat and your cat, and we're all taking treats with us out on our adventures with our cats anyway. So very practical advice. I like that.
I won't share one, but the other one I would just highlight, I think is would be of good effectivity, is called ping pong. So the ones I think would be probably the most effective for cat guardians, and there's like station to station, but would probably be 1, 2, 3, up, down, and ping pong, and then maybe mat to mat. But you got to carry mats with you then. But
ping pong is when you toss a treat, they go get it and then return to you, right?
Yeah. And you could do, and it doesn't have to be a perfect return. Again, this is not something we're trying to get, we're not doing an obedience trial for this. It can just be, I'm kind of coming your way. Heck yeah. Because what you're looking for is approach. You're just we're looking behavior. It's either escape or approach. So if we can incorporate more approach, that's what we're doing, So that's the name of the game. So it doesn't have to be coming and looking at you. Could toss a treat. Durga could take 2 steps over. Cool. Toss a little treat here and just try to get movement going, because yeah, just making that environment dynamic. And then again, if stimuli are involved, all the more power.
Yeah. Well, we have an interesting question from a viewer. Terry says that her cat was born at the beginning of the pandemic, and they found that masked interactions were very difficult. And so she's asking if you could speak to cats with strong pareidolia. I'm not sure if I'm saying that, which is seeing faces in inanimate objects, and the challenges of them not being able to see human faces when masked.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating one. Thank you, Terry, too, for engaging. That's fascinating, an issue. I have not come across that yet, luckily, or dealt with that. So pretty much not recognizing the owner. Is that the issue that's going down? They're not recognizing the owner and then thinking it's a stranger. Would that be the issue at play? Just to make sure I'm wrapping my head around it.
Okay, Terry, if you can expand in the comments on that, then
then maybe it would be, how do you, and then we can get maybe down a little bit, but just So I'm thinking if the issue is then redirecting or not knowing who the owners are, but we'll definitely explore this more, but just maybe a little more details. Otherwise, I'll just keep going and then I won't be even talking.
Oh, she says the vet mostly. So I guess going to the vet office and the vet is wearing the mask, and then their cat is scared of the vet and doesn't recognize it.
I will say this, in healthcare, one thing that a lot of people were doing, there are see-through masks. I mean, we could either maybe get them for the vet or do it, but I would say it's going to be much easier to see if that would work than to think about some behavior or environmental. See, I'm catching myself. And that is an environmental modification right there. The easiest one we could do, as opposed to doing something where it's a graded approach or we're building it up. But honestly, I am of that mindset where, and I saw it too in healthcare, because especially with interpreters and really with the deaf population, out of respect and wanting that full communication, being able to read lips. So that is where I saw the mask, see-through mask being used. But I wonder if that would be, and then you could always, but I don't know, Terry, what are your thoughts about that? We can explore this more, but I'm just wondering about that. My mind always goes to simple, easy fixes. That's, wear the see-through mask.
Yeah, bring one with you to the vet and say, hey, can you please wear this? My cat is scared of masks.
Give them some cookies, bring them some food. Vets are so awesome and they love food, and they're just, such a underserved population in so many ways. And yeah, definitely love the vets. But that let us know more, Terry, because I'm curious to see if there's another, or if it would be something that, you know, if you found success with or explore. But that definitely could be challenging, with especially in that circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I don't have anything to add to this because it's not something that I've encountered or had to do anything about before.
I'll say it is awesome that you have a good relationship with your vet. So when they're not wearing a mask, the cat is in a good spirit. So, I
That's
mean, in
true.
other words, just everything typical about setting them up for success at the vet and doing all that, with the carrier from feel away I never push, but I always do say, my mind is just anxiety for gabapentin, so minor for vet travel. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, maybe, but and it can be so effective. We've seen studies, but I wonder about environmental stuff and that, but if it is something more deep seated, and I wonder, Terry, is it still going on? Is the vet still wearing a mask? Or
She just said that they're finally going without masks, so it's better.
yeah, yeah, no, it's the wonderful. Well, I say wonderful, and it's not for the people who are experiencing it, but the very fascinating thing is how how behavior finds a way towards effectivity and finding whatever reinforcer it will find, escape or access, and the little strange little idiosyncrasies and rituals and little things that come up with behaviors too in ways are so fascinating, but at the same time happen like that, unanticipated. It's like, oh my, oh, what the heck, the math today? I didn't. So I also send a lot of empathy and understanding, because I can imagine how stressful that is. You go to the vet and think, oh, it's just another, and then bang. So I definitely, as a guardian, I can understand that, yeah, yeah, my heart goes out to you too for that, because that's a tough situation too. And it
Yeah.
sounds like, I know you set it up for as much success as possible. So we'll end with that.
Yeah. Um, so the steps that you outlined for trying to get your cat comfortable with encountering strangers out in public spaces, would you say you could use those same things for dogs? Because I know dogs they're another potentially stressful stimulus for a cat when we're out adventuring. And I'm not talking about off leash dogs; those are obviously very scary, and we would deal with an off leash dog like coming at you completely differently. But I just mean like somebody's walking their dog on a leash down the hiking trail or coming towards you, with their dog on a leash, would you follow the same steps to get your cat comfortable with those encounters as we would with the people?
You very well could. And I think that's going to be up to the guardian, is what's their level of comfort. Do they want the cat to be interacting with any dog? I mean, I personally don't trust anyone's dog in America, if
Yeah.
I'm out, especially with, I mean, there's people I don't trust in my cats. There's no way in heck dogs are getting close. So I think we got to think about what is the modus operandi that the individual wants to work with? What is their comfort, and what's, just that framework they're working within? I mean, if it's something that they're okay with a dog coming up, well, then maybe taking, and again, it's so tough because it's too much to be asking our cats to deal with any and every behavior that the dog can throw at it, and we see what happens in society. Our society has a lot of, we're having so many, just lack of resources in so many ways, and so many individuals, just, and myself included in ways, just trying to find ways to set ourselves up for success. And then behavior comes out in crazy ways. And I see that in people. So I get worried about dogs in that same way. But I think we can't ever know how the other dog's going to be. So, but if our cat necessarily is the one who maybe is not comfortable, we can do pattern games, the ones talked about. Another one you could do with maybe a friend's dogs, your own dogs, is a voluntary sharing, which is another pattern game Leslie McDevitt came up, which is pretty much, it would be, what you would do is you would, let's say, working with a friend's dog or someone else's dog. This is again to kind of change associations and dogs with a certain dog or a few dogs, and then the cat hopefully conditioned to generalize as you work on this with time and effort in nice, secure, and safe ways, um, to be able to be a little more, maybe less, having a different association with dogs and trails. And voluntary sharing would pretty much be, you would have the dog and the cat at safe distances or distances that are comfortable for everybody, and then you would, put a finger on maybe just a target, a high five from the dog, get a behavior, you would click, and you would give access to reinforcer to the cat first and then the dog. So the
Ah,
voluntary sharing is, the click is, it's actually, yet again, something kind of sandwiched in between the click and the treat, that they get it before you. So it's neat because the other learners work, or the other individuals engaging to really work to access reinforcer for the other for themselves. And I don't have any studies, but there is some like fascinating stuff with, and I don't want to get too into it, I'll misspeak, but with rats and like how rats would engage with each other when their lever time was able to be pushed or not for such things. So voluntary sharing is a very interesting thing, but I encourage peeps to check out that more. There are videos that Leslie McDevitt has done. I mean, that can be done just to get cats more comfortable with dogs, and that can be for introductions in a lot of ways. I'd say if you're not as comfortable with that, again, knowing location, when's it busiest, when are the most dogs going to be there, time of day,
Mhm.
season, considering all that, and knowing, because again, you know, you can't set yourself up for success if you're going at the busiest part of the day when the dog
Right.
walkers are. So know your location. And again, it's environmental modification. So kind of planning, having that insight, getting baseline data. What's the place like? And then at least when you're have that, you could say, okay, we kind of have a trail marked out. We have location, and then you can work with that location with more pattern games that we talked about, ping pong. You know, 1, 2, 3, getting distance away or being able to move at a distance away. 1, 2, 3 could be a great way to get away. And I will mention too, just having maybe like an emergency recall cue, or just, I mean, we, can target to the bag, but also something that might be a little bit like pick up, when you're letting them know they're going to get picked up, and it's an involuntary thing. So, hey, I'm going to pick you up now. You really don't have a say. I like that idea of, if we have to really pick them up in an emergency and they're not able to target, or they're just kind of staring, to at least have a word or have a cue, so it's not just hands grabbing. And we can build that at home in a very graded way, just having literally our cat next to us, maybe on the ground, and just kind of picking up, saying the word pick up, and just a little bit on the ribs, give them a treat, and just, incrementally over sessions, just kind of lift them off a little bit of the ground, pick up. So I think that's an important one to be comfortable with. And then having a recall, an emergency recall, and then having a start button for the cat, which would be, we saw those a little bit with pattern games in the same way. Like, let's see, when the up down, when the cat ate the treat, looks back up, that looking up at me or orienting is a start button for me to then give them a treat. Maybe trying to um, figure out a little start button to put in, or observe your cat so you can see if they're not comfortable with the situation, besides just observing body language. Maybe you have a little behavior chain that you work in after you're kind of doing this pick up or something, where you then put a start button in. So I don't know, maybe a more active start button, have something they can tap on you. I'm just trying to think, but something that they can actively say, bam, pick me up. So that's something maybe to think about, just in terms of giving them a little more say into it, or having, besides just observing the body language, maybe a little, cue from them, to kind of barometer to cue start button to say, hey, please pick me up, or to
Mhm.
work with something like that. Or if they're giving you a certain behavior, pick them up when they're giving you it. So then either they won't give it to you unless they want to be picked up. I don't know. That might be a sneaky way to condition it. Don't take that in stone. I'm just thinking this through, but that might be something neat to play with too.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. Lots of behavioral games and things that I wouldn't have thought about. My takeaway, I guess, from this, or my biggest takeaway from this, is that if you're wanting to introduce your cat to a dog, like a friend's dog, or maybe you're even got a dog and you're bringing it into your own home, the voluntary sharing is an effective way to get your cat to associate the dog with positive things and start building that relationship. But if you're out in a public space and you're not wanting your cat to necessarily interact with the dog, but you just don't want them to get scared, or you maybe want to distract them while a dog is passing. So maybe you do the pickup cue, like you
Yep.
mentioned, step off the trail with your cat. So that way the dog isn't going to be too close, and do one of those pattern games. And then once the dog, is out of sight line or whatever, you can resume your adventure.
Yeah. That sounds awesome to me. And the other thing I didn't mention, this goes so far. I mean, there's so much more in the home, just the voluntary sharing that for introduction. So, we can explore that for another hour. But the one I always mention is no, I mean, the dog on leash, or on harness, and just knowing the dog's history, too. I can't go enough of that, and how it is outside when something small darts, and just kind of having a real sense of how is that dog, and having a protective contact barrier if need be, because it only takes one time, I think, and it's just scares me in some cases. So I think I want to just underline safety first and foremost always, and just not say go voluntary share. There's so much more, but check out Leslie McDevitt's videos, because I think those are so wonderful things. And even if you're having just some troubles in homestead between some cats, if it's not at the point where need reintroduction, well, voluntary sharing can be a great way to build that up too, besides play and other things. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, Terry, another Terry, says that her comfort level doesn't include new people holding my cats around and about. And yeah, no, I definitely wasn't saying pick me up as a stranger picking your cat up.
Oh no.
I
Yeah.
meant like you are cueing your cat, pick me up, and then stepping out off the trail. Sorry if what I said was confusing. I wouldn't let a random stranger pick up my cats either.
If I miscontextualized it too to lead to that, no, that's what I was talking about. Having pretty much meaning, I'm just calling it this, an involuntary cue, meaning in the same way, you would say, nope, we're not crossing a road, car's coming to a kid, you were saying that to your own cat to pick them up.
Mhm.
No, not having strangers. And again, the idea of objectifying would be a little bit too much. That would be like, that's my issue with a lot of the costumes for cats, stuff like, I'm like, but yeah, no, if we can definitely just involuntary cue for you. Like Emily excellently said, I think picking up, stepping aside, and I mean, if the space allows to, you can kind of go off. But again, how
Mhm.
interested the dog? What's the dog's body language doing? And and yeah. I think there's so many variables with meeting dogs out on walks, whether
Yeah.
with your cat alone. Sometimes that it's flow charts out the wazoo.
It is. I know that's probably the biggest struggle that we, as people who take our cats out, have is
Yeah.
uh, just encountering dogs, even if they're on a leash, can be scary. And then, especially if you're on a hiking trail and an off leash dog, because that's very common, especially since those of us who are adventuring with our cats. We tend to try to go to the quieter places where there are less people and less dogs, but those are also the places people go and hike with their dogs off leash. So
Yep.
it's a catch 22 and such a big struggle, and one that I hope, the more conversations we have like this and like the podcast episode you mentioned you listened to earlier, my previous season where I talked with
Yeah.
a panel of people about dealing with off-leash dog encounters. The more conversations we have and hopefully the more awareness we raise about this, we can start creating environments that are healthy and safe for everybody.
Yeah, and I just want to say that it was such an excellent podcast. Definitely go out and listen to it. And I think it just kind of resonates and makes me think to say it. But that's not a time not to educate people when you do pick your cat. Hey, I picked up my cat because this reason or that. So, and not be judgmental or anything. Just it's just whatever you need to say in an eloquent way, but to educate a little bit with, off leash dogs just really can startle and get spooked, and Poe could run away and never see her again. So stuff like that, I think, and again, not being, oh, woe is me, the world, but in a very calm way. Hey, how's it going? And have a good day. Hope to see you again. But make a dialogue, because I mean, some people won't allow it, and that's fine. You don't need to. But for those people that are going to allow that dialogue, well, you might set that next adventure cat and guardian up for success, because they
Yeah.
might say, oh, shoot, there's a cat. Oh, come on, and get their dog back on leash or something. So, yeah, that might just, I mean, I think the other podcast I don't want to give away, that's one to listen to because it says so many salient things too. And it does say, in ways to kill them with kindness too, but just, try that relationship and open it up, and yeah, just keep trying to, like Emily said, spread the dialogue and the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, JR, this has been so great. Thank you
Yes.
so much for this wonderful conversation. It has been very enlightening and informative, and I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. So thank you, and
Yeah.
thank you. Great questions and interaction too. I appreciate everyone showing up and taking time out of their evening and hanging out with us and geeking out with us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Terry and Sandra and Robin. They're all the people who, commented
Hey,
and said hello. And for those who maybe didn't say hello and you're watching or listening on the replay, thank you for watching. Before you go, can
yeah,
you tell us where people can find you if they want to learn more about what you do and the types of training that you offer? I know you've got your website, thecognitive.cat.com, and then your Instagram at the_cognitive_cat. And then do you have any upcoming classes or anything that you're teaching? I know you do some online training courses.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Appreciate it. I'm also on Facebook too. I tend to be on Instagram more, but please first message me. I'm always down to geek out and cat chat, and always just just explore more and learn more. So I appreciate all insights and inspirations again the community shared. But just message me. I love talking, as you guys can see, but I'm a good listener too. And with that said, yes, thank you for just mentioning any upcoming courses. I will be doing an October course, the Conditional Cat at Trumplo, TROMPLO.com. And that is a really cool behavior platform run by Agnieszka Janurik, is how you say her last name, out of Poland. Courses are in English, but some marvelous trainers there. So I encourage everyone, well, definitely to, if you can, check out my course, but also check out the other amazing trainers courses there, because there's equine courses, there's rabbit courses, dog courses. So really a wonderful growing community there, and always a wonderful place to interact too. So just a shout out to Trumplo community and trumplo.com as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we've got some people chiming in. Sandra says thank you. Darren says thank you. Terry says thanks for the great ideas. Everyone's really enjoying everything that you shared. If for those that are watching, if you have any final questions, now's your chance to drop them in the comments. I while I'm waiting for those final questions to come in, if you have them, I want to let everyone know about the next episode of Kitty Cat Go Live. Will be Wednesday, September 13th at 8 p.m. I'm going to be chatting with Sonia Grassmug. Some of you may know her on Instagram. Her cat Percy is a big adventure cat. Percy the Explorer Cat is his Instagram handle. And she has recently done a lot of international travel, traveled from the United States to Europe and around Europe with her cat. So she's going to be talking to us and sharing about her experience and how to navigate flying internationally with your cat and traveling from country to country with a pet, because there's a lot of paperwork and red tape and everything that has to be taken care of, and it can be confusing and overwhelming. And so I'm excited to have her on to share about that. And then, of course, if you have any questions or want to continue any discussions, you can join my Facebook group, Kitty Cat Go Adventure Team. I'd love to have you over there. And be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or the follow button if you're watching on Facebook, so you can keep up with future episodes and happenings here at Kitty Cat Go. But that's it for tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you learned something new and had some fun. And again, JR, thank you so much.
Thank everybody, and thank you. And I gotta say, Percy the cat exploring, I think, in Ireland right now.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Check that account out, guys. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well,
And,
good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
and check next week's podcast out, or the next
Yeah.
podcast out.